Welcome to the realm of magic and mystery, classic horror and sci-fi. You are now entering the House of the Unusual podcast with your hosts, Eddie and Joe. Welcome, everyone. I am your host, Joe Pavlansky, pop culture historian, writer for Scary Monsters magazine, and curator of the Crypt of Classics. Co-hosting, as always, is the maestro of mail-order mysteries and owner of houseoftheunusual.com, the intrepid Eddie Guevara. How you doing, Eddie?
How are you, Joe? Hey, Joe.
It's hanging in there, man. Same old, same old.
Well, I got some great important information in front of me. Today I came across a couple of articles that, we had one of our special episodes where we spoke about flying saucers, and we also spoke about the Bigfoot and a few things I think, of events. So, well, this is the thing that I wanted to mention. I came across this article of a man. Apparently, there was a report of a man flying a jetpack over the Los Angeles area, and it was first reported. It says here, an unusual call came into the Los Angeles airport concerning an unidentified man flying a jetpack. An American Airlines flight was the first to report the guy in a jetpack at the plane's altitude of 3,000 feet above Los International Airport on Sunday. They said that the man was approximately 30 yards away from the aircraft. The FBI is looking into the matter. Now, other than that report, today's Wall Street Journal also had an article which says everyone is watching the skies and seeing UFOs, and that sightings are in the rise, and 2020 shapes up to become the banner year for close encounters. What do you think of all this stuff, Joe? I'm just kind of curious because I found the articles exciting.
You know what? I read that the article on the guy with the jetpack, and I thought that was amazing. I mean, for maybe the last 10 or 20 years, they've been, people and different companies have been trying out, jetpacks, whether over land or water. So I'm wondering if this is somebody who, maybe had one of your old mail order mystery items that you sent them years ago on how to make a jetpack and finally made one. And, he's flying up there with the planes at 3,000 feet. Maybe he spent his quarter and shipping and waited his 6 weeks, got the plans and put it together and, got an actual working, backpack going to fly through the air. I mean, how amazing is that?
It's funny that you said that. It is true, Joe. They used to, especially in popular mechanics and popular science, there was always somebody selling a jetpack, like the plans on how to build one. Long time ago, I obtained those plans, and I went ahead and I actually reproduced them, and I sold them for a couple of years on eBay. The funny thing about it is that, now that you mentioned that, because I had forgotten, is that when I was selling that jetpack, there was one particular guy that I thought was funny. He says, after receiving the information, I see that it will cost over $1 million to build. Therefore, I would like a refund. I thought it was funny because, first of all, in reality, how many people actually that buy something like that are willing or have the funds to be able to actually build a jetpack, But
you say that, but here's the thing is that millionaires now were fans of mail order items back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and now they made their own business, or they made their millions one way or another, and they have that pocket change to make an actual working backpack.
Let's be honest. What about the guy a few months ago that he apparently got killed in a rocket he built in his backyard? What I thought was funny about that incident is that here's a guy who's smart enough to say that he was able to build a rocket, and the reason he was building the rocket was to fly up high enough to see if the Earth was flat.
Oh yeah, I do remember hearing about that.
I thought that was funny, because why would you be that smart and yet that kind of nutty, But
I got to wonder where did he get his plans to build the rocket? Was did he develop those plans, or were they, another mail order item for, because, back in I'm not sure the exact year when that article was. I believe I seen one not too long ago from the 70s. It was, plans on how to build your own, rocket
Yeah,
ship. So,
they
maybe,
did have.
yeah, maybe when this guy was younger or something, that was something he always dreamed about, and now, he had the motivation to actually, put real plans together to build his rocket, and maybe that was the
Well,
fruition
the
of
thing
it.
that's interesting about it is that the guy, I think I forgot, this happened a few months ago. This, I think, happened around maybe March or a little bit earlier, where this guy actually got killed in making his rocket. Now, he had already tried similar attempts earlier, and most, I think, had worked. Um, what he did and his background, they did show it on TV what it was. I kind of forgot. But you know what? We've had people like the guy who put, let's storm Area 51, and all of a sudden that he got over 2-3 million people to actually sign up for it. You have now, I get, and with the coronavirus, you've had people all over the place, staying home, nothing to do, so their curiosities go wild. It's just funny the way that some people here, we are talking about mail order items and things that we would laugh about, but at the same time, there's actually people out there that are putting together stuff, and who knows if they got them in magazines like Popular Science or Popular Mechanics. I mean, the magazines were filled with how-to plans. Um,
Now, see, you would know this better than I would, or have a better recollection, because you lived through the '60s and the '70s. Would you have even thought back then, flipping through the comics and seeing ads for build your own rockets, build your own backpack? Would you have thought that any time in the future or near future that these things would have became like a reality? Because it's looking now. We look at it now and we're saying, oh, these crazy or people on the fringe are building these rockets or backpacks, and we're saying that in 2020. But if we look ahead, say 2040 or 2050, you might be able to find these things at your local Target or Walmart or something. It might be something that's kind of mainstream. Would you have thought back in the '60s that this would have been something
the, the, very
very
mainstream. Well,
mainstream?
actually, when you're saying 60s, you're making me a little older than I am here. You mean the 70s, you know? Uh,
Okay, we'll
yeah,
go with '70s.
you know what? I always wanted to buy plans for everything, how to build a robot, to how to build a flying saucer. I always looked for them. Did I ever think I was going to build one? Ironically, maybe in the back of my mind, I thought that if I had the plans, I would be able to. I don't know. I don't really recall that well, but I do know that I do own quite a few plans. In fact, I bought.
Are you sure you're not the person that was up
Well,
there
you're not
3,000
supposed to
feet?
tell the public now, because now you kind of rooted me out there with my actual plans. But what really gets me though is what I found interesting about that. Because first of all, remember, we've had jetpacks in the army back in World War II. We've had them. They,
Oh
they
yeah.
they even do them today where they put a hose of water in. It's like, and if you fly over the water, where common people can do this. Now,
Oh, I've seen those, and man, those
yeah,
look
but
like a
the thing that
blast,
kind of
man.
threw me off with this is how the heck can somebody have a jetpack, and what type of technology do they possess that they can fly 3,000 feet in the air? And what about if this is being done by somebody that the FBI has to investigate because the government doesn't even know about? Then technically there is some really smart people out there, because technology for a jetpack, if we had it, I mean, which we do have, but the original stuff had a lot of flaws. It's kind of like, the United States put a lot of money into a lot of black projects back in the 40s and 50s and early 60s that worked on flying saucers. They worked on many things, and one of the reasons that we don't have disc shaped flying saucers is because I think, if I'm correct in what I'm saying, when they first tested it, the aerodynamics on it, I think, yeah, the aerodynamics on it were not that great because of the fact that there's no lift on a round object like that. I'm talking off my head right now. It's been a while since I've actually looked and studied that.
Now the last I've seen about like a disc shaped flying saucer from things that I've read is that there's been speculation that in the center of it, there's some type of anti-gravity machine or engine that it develops its own gravitational field around the flying saucer, or whatever it is that it gives it its own gravity, so that way it could travel at crazy speeds and do these 90-degree turns while doing these crazy speeds, and it won't affect the people inside. Because now I know when the Nazis, they tried to develop their flying saucer war machine, and there's historical photos of that. They had some issues with that, but I believe they were still working with kind of like a jet propulsion engine, and it wouldn't really work out. So like everyone always says, the military and government's 20, 30, could be up to 50, 100 years ahead of what the public knows. So there very well could be more stuff than we know of. But it's funny that just some random guys, he's hanging out with the jetliners up at 3,000
Yeah, well,
feet.
that's what I found really amazing about the thing. Now, what I'm thinking, though, is when we're talking about all this new flying saucers now with the article where so many people claiming to see things. Now, remember, technology such as this, you have a lot of people now flying small drones. You have people designing flying saucers, and there's so much available technology stuff that you can send away for an Amazon, and you can practically build anything you want. So now we have a bigger problem in our time where there's going to be more confusion about flying saucers due to the fact that there's so many people. Because I got to be honest with you, I'm one of those individuals that has tried countless times to fly objects up in the sky whenever I could, just to cause confusion for fun. And
speaking of Amazon, I don't know if you've seen the latest article. They just got cleared by the FAA to get their delivery drones in the air to put to use. So I think we're going to be seeing those here in the very, very near future. And I think a lot of people, especially for the investigators working at MUFON, I think they're going to start getting a lot of reports of these, people seeing flying saucers, but they're actually going to be these Amazon drones delivering packages. Because when I was working for MUFON doing the field investigator, I was getting a lot of reports and people sending pictures, and I was able to deduce that a lot of these pictures and reports were actually that of people flying drones at night. So now you're going to start seeing more drones in the air because Amazon's they're going to put out a ton of them to deliver packages. So I think the UFO reports are going to start skyrocketing.
Well, that's one thing that can happen. That idea, I read that article today. I think it's in the same Wall Street Journal that speaks of Amazon getting cleared on that, and it's the first time ever. But you got to understand one thing. When you're talking about basically people seeing unusual items, unusual things in the sky. Now, one of the things that I've always said about UFOs to me, like I said, I love the stuff. I love the genre. I collected more UFO books. Now, did I hardly believe in them? Not really. I believe more that they were earthly vehicles from, maybe governments or top secret experimental vehicles. And let's say the United States government did for many years under the guise of UFOs, fake them purposely in order to, create like the stealth bomber. I have an article. In fact, I have the original magazine of 1976 from Popular Science that showed a picture of the stealth fighter, I think it was, and it says, does the government have in hiding such a thing? And 20 years later, the darn thing showed up for real. And the first thing I did was remark to myself, I thought to myself, and I said, yo, wait a minute. I have that magazine that 20 years ago said, was it true? And all along, they actually had it, and they just didn't tell the public, So, yes, there is, my belief, a lot of stuff we have. In fact, one day, which it was a costly decision for me, because a costly situation, a story I wanted to tell you is, I went one day. I wanted when I first, started doing this mail order stuff, and I told you one of my hottest ads was in Popular Science, where I sold the plans on how to build a flying saucer, and it said free flying saucer plans, catalog $2, and it was a very very profitable ad. But what I did with it was, in order to actually get some type of flying saucer plans that would look really legitimately good, is I went to a Newark, New Jersey. There is a patent. I forgot what they call it, a United States patent uh, depot inside the library of Newark, which is the main library in New Jersey. Newark is one of the biggest cities in New Jersey. And I went there and I parked my car outside, and I was up there on microfiche film photocopying different United States patents, from Lockheed to everything that resembled a flying saucer. I actually got 17 different patents, and the one I used was the one that looked more, which was a 1947 patent that actually had a disc-shaped saucer in the patent and how to produce it. And it was issued a United States patent. It kind of resembles a lot where there's some magazines of Popular Science from the 50s or mechanics that has a flying saucer in the front, which supposedly was made by the United States Navy or Air Force. I forgot exactly which of the two claimed to have made it, but it's a beautiful print, and it shows the actual dish. Now, I remember hearing in the History Channel, one of the documentaries, because that's all I watch is documentaries about, Bigfoot, UFOs, all this stuff. And I remember clearly where it showed that particular photo, and there's some people, photographed next to a large flying saucer, disc-shaped object about 30 feet in diameter, and supposedly it's the one the government was secretly working on. Now, they did claim in the show that it didn't work, and they spent millions, and one of them was the Aero car that was produced by Canada, which was supposed to fly like 500 feet in the air or something like that, and it only flew about 15, 20 inches off the ground. It worked more like a hovercraft than an actual flying saucer, and they spent literally millions of dollars into this device. um, I'm not sure exactly, but the thing I'm trying to say to you is that if there were so many patents issued to disc-shaped objects from the 50s, I'm sure that maybe a lot of that stuff never was made public. A lot of those stuffs are what they call black projects. In fact, if you go now to that new site that I believe was Obama who started making and released, or Clinton, which is called the Black Vault, you can download all those, which
Oh
is a
yeah.
great site too. I'm telling you, everything from Roswell, all those things are there. But which the funny thing about it, of course, everything's blacking out. So I mean,
Well, the guy that runs that, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He gets all his information, and a good majority of his information, from Freedom of Information Act requests, and he has over 2 million pages of information online there, and it's everything that he's
well,
got from the
one of those
government.
sites is actually run by the FBI. I don't know if it's Black Vault or something. The FBI has one also, and they themselves release to the public all that papers. Um, you got to understand, we've been living in a time when, between the 1940s to the present, especially the early 1940s, innovation was number one. When we had the World's Fair, like for example, the 1939 World's Fair showed the first time Westinghouse, the famous Westinghouse company, put out a robot that was called the Westinghouse Electric robot. He was called Electro the robot, and he appeared with his dog Sparkle. Now, an interesting story behind that is, because I told you again, I'm a nut when it comes to searching for stuff I wanted. Well, I couldn't find the robot plans that I've been looking for in comic books, right? But I did find that when I saw the article from the 1939 World's Fair, I wanted to know what happened to Electro the robot and where he could be found today. Okay. So my search started in mid 1995. I contacted I believe it was the Westinghouse Archives, which I believe were in Massachusetts, if I remember at the time. And I contacted the guy in charge of the archives who had retired from Westinghouse after somehow 40 years. And this guy actually, um, his name was Charlie Rook. He passed away recently. You can actually look him up in Google and find out who he was. And he was the curator for the archives. Now, I actually got to talk with him, and he was so excited because I said to him, "Do you have the plans?" Because he told me that after the war, they used, I think Electro was used in some type of vending machine pizzeria or whatever, and they had him on display, and then he disappeared from history. The belief was that he was, according to some books that were written about robots, the belief was that he was scrapped for metal. In World War II, we were a shortage of steel and stuff, and a lot of the stuff that were built were scrapped, and they were used for scrap by the government. So what happened is I started a search on the robot. And Charlie Rook, which, believe it or not, sent me a slight bit of a fortune on there because he mailed me an envelope. And inside the envelope, there was a bunch of information. And when I'm talking about a bunch of information of the robot, including 10 original autographs of Electro the robot and the dog Sparkle. Now, he said to me there was one guy who was the son of the guy who did the robot, the engineer who designed it. He said that he held the head, or he had a copy of the head. They thought there was a second head made for the robot. Well, when you go far and beyond, Ohio has a museum. And when I'm telling you, I searched for this robot, man. I even had the quote on reproducing the thing. Of course, it didn't go far because I was quoted at almost $82,000 to reproduce, the
Oh
7-foot
wow.
robot. Now, I wanted it like the submarine. I wanted to get it, right? So I kept always thinking, imagine if I were to able to find in some warehouse the original Electro. Well, as the story goes, and I thought, I had actually made, because the point is that in some of my mail order catalogs and stuff, I'm selling one of my original photographs. I reproduced it into a large poster of Electro the robot. And in Ohio, there's a museum exactly, where the engineer who designed the robot lives. And in this museum, which right now I have a mental block as the name of the museum, because this is a conversation you just actually reminded me of, which is something I was going to talk in future shows, but I had, I didn't have it in my mind at the time. But anyway, the museum was, apparently they got a hold of the original Electro. So when I contacted the museum, I wanted to know where it was found. And I'll tell you why, because here I am searching for the thing, and I thought I was like the only one looking for this thing. And when I saw somebody else found it, I was kind of like upset inside, because I'm like, damn, man, all these years I've looked for this, and now somebody else got it. And what a coincidence. And I really dedicated a lot of time into this Electro the robot as to what originally happened to him. And what happened was is that the son of the guy who designed it, his father, before he passed away, had the robot in back of a pickup truck. And for the last 50 something years or more, because this is back in 2001, 2000, whatever, when because in 95 I started looking for the thing, and then I spoke with Charlie Rook several times, and I wanted to ask Charlie Rook if the blueprint still existed. And he looked through the archives, and he sent me copies of the blueprints, but copies that he had on microfiche. He didn't have them on the original blueprints, because apparently they don't exist. So I do have that original envelope that he sent me in my collection, that I should bring it up and show the public one time, that they could see, because every week now I'm doing unboxing videos of the novelties and stuff from the 70s and stuff. And what I did with that is I contacted and I got a hold of the son of the guy who created the robot. And he explained to me that they had some ranch, or I forgot where it was, and inside there was an old pickup. And when they looked at the thing inside the pickup, they found Electro which of course, I don't know if it had a lot of rust or whatever, but they found the original Electro the robot from Westinghouse, and the head that he had was the head from the robot. They didn't have a second copy as they thought. It was actually somebody took off the head and he had the head, so he was able to join the two together, kind of like the Headless Horseman. But he's right now, as of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, he's in the Ohio Museum. I forget the actual name. In fact, you're from Campbell, Ohio, so you should know. You're close to the museum. You might actually be able to visit it before I can. But I've been trying to drive down there to see this robot that I wanted so bad. Now, obviously, it was donated to the museum. There is no tag price on it because, of course, if you would have that, it's probably worth over $1 million. It did appear in the 1939 World's Fair. And the point I brought about this robot is that we had the technology to build a real robot in 1939. In 1926, there's a magazine called Science and Invention. One of the covers, I think it's the May or June issue of 1926, shows a military-style robot that if you look at the cover, it shows a bunch of people running for cover, and it looks like he has two electric saws in his hands, like spinning saws, but in reality, it's supposed to be like batons, like police batons, and it spins around and disperses the crowds from whatever reason, let's say protests and stuff they're having. And the robot and how it was supposed to be designed inside the magazine of Science and Invention, there's an entire page on that robot. Now, this robot was supposed to make an appearance for the 1939 World's Fair. So they had it already devised in early 1920s. Now, in my search for robots, I have, oh my God, over 100 different photographs of robots that were built by individual scientists, not scientists, but, inventors throughout the country and abroad. Okay, I have many photographs. And the very first robot, back then they used to call him Mechanical Man. I'm talking about the early 20s. And the name robot was later coined by, there was a famous play, I think it was not iRobot, it was called something, but they coined the phrase robot. And they made a robot that would sit in a chair and he'd get up and sit down again. He weighed like half a ton. So they were called automatons. Oh, I can't get the word. What the heck? I can't get the
Automatrons,
something like
that.
And they were later called Mechanical Man. And the thing is that they go back to the early 1920s where they were made of cast iron. So yes, we've had the technology to build devices such as robots and maybe as much as flying saucers during the 1950s. Especially, that famous German flying saucer called the Bell, which they were experimenting on for years. And there's a lot of technology still not public that people were working on. A good example is, the story of Tesla. When Tesla died in his hotel room, the FBI came in and took away a bunch of his trunks. And he had a bunch of trunks with a lot of experiments in it. And there's a few that are missing. In fact, the History Channel had a story on the missing trunks of Tesla. Now, Tesla is probably, at his time, he was called a charlatan. He was called a fake, because you got to remember, he worked for Thomas Edison. And Thomas Edison probably wanted to claim a lot of the inventions that Tesla provided for him. He had no money. In fact, he died penniless. But we have to understand that Tesla is probably one of the smartest humans that ever lived.
And what's interesting about Tesla, speaking of him, is that when the FBI, they came in and they seized his property 2 days after his death, is that President Trump's uncle, John G. Trump, was a professor at MIT at the time, and he was given a lot of Tesla's papers and all that to look over.
That is correct.
Because he was doing work as a technical aide for the National Defense Research
That
Committee.
Is correct.
So that's interesting connection too.
That's correct, and that's one of the things that I remember. They mentioned that in that Tesla special on the History Channel. I think it was History or A&E, but I'm always watching this stuff. So I watch so much of it. A lot of times, I got to go do back.
Well, there's a cool conspiracy theory out there that when John G. Trump got his hands on Tesla's stuff, that he was able to use some of that information, because there's a lot of theories, a lot of conspiracy theories and all that Tesla actually, had the plans or was working on the plans for, time machines. So there's a lot of theories out there that John G. Trump was able to use those papers to actually, make a working time machine. And now, conspiracy theories, but, we'll have fun with the story, is that he went to the future and told Donald Trump, hey, you are, you could be president, blah, blah, blah. And that now that Trump is in his presidency, that he was actually told that and what's going to happen and what to do based off of John G. Trump's, coming to the future to tell him. Now, of course, it's all conjecture, conspiracy theory, but it's a fun little, something to think about. If that technology existed back then, well, what could be available now.
It's kind of funny. I thought you were going to say that his uncle was really Trump, and he just.
It could be.
But yes, I remember that story. Now, one thing now everybody knows me as a collector of novelties, of comic book novelties such as Joke and Magic. But among my UFO collection, I have about, if I'm correct, 34 books of Tesla and his inventions. I paid for one particular book that has, I think, 240 of his patents, or 125 or something like that. I haven't looked at the book in years, but I paid back in 2000 for that book close to $280. And it's a special edition of all his patents, and it actually shows the patents. And the pages, when you open it up, it's got 24 karat gold around the trim of the book. And you open it up and some pages fold out, showing the plans. I do have a very heavy collection of, forbidden knowledge. I have all that stuff from anti-gravity books, flying saucer, UFO, but Tesla is my main one, where I have so many movies and stuff of him. I really,
and there's a lot of conspiracy theories too that, because, Tesla, it's believed that he had one of the highest IQs, ever. And there's a lot of conspiracy theory going around that, he was actually, came from another planet.
Yes, of course.
Because his IQ is so high and he was able to do all this stuff. So, that's pretty cool to think, that could be something as well.
I don't know if you're aware of the fact that Tesla was a guy who basically invented wireless transmission of stuff, because he had and he tested a submarine he built for the 1939 World's Fair. And he showed that you can transmit electrical powers or something through the air. And then, of course, if you watch that special on Tesla, it showed all the experiments he built, including that huge tower that he wanted to build a world communication system that would end all wars. And that was the way he tried to, obviously portray it as a machine to end all wars. And, he was fascinating. In fact, there was a time that I think New York City or Long Island, where he had one of his labs, because of him, there was a blackout in the entire town. And I think the electric company banned him because, this guy was just ahead of his time. Now, funny thing.
Oh, yeah. He was centuries ahead
but
of
a lot
his
of
time.
things, Joe, you might not know this, but a lot of times people don't realize when you work around high voltage like Tesla used to, a lot of that can cause cancer. You know what I'm saying? And he is a man exposed to 24/7 high voltage. In fact, what are the inventions we have from him? The Tesla coil. In fact, if you recall, in one of my older episodes or a talk I had with you, I mentioned to you that there is a company that is still in business and they sell they used to be named under, the name was Amazing, like the word amazing number one, and it just had the one next to it. And this company, they produce books on how to build your own robot, a phaser, and ion ray guns, and it had a bunch of plans. And this company was big, especially with the high schools and colleges, and they sold hundreds of different plans from how to build hoverboards to. And the reason I know this, the name of the guy is Bob, who owns the company, and of course, if you look at him, he's missing a couple of fingers, and I mean, this guy experimented with a lot of stuff. He's one of those inventors. I had a conversation with him way back in the day, and the reason I called him is because he had a book he put out, a catalog, and it was entitled Far Out Science. And I was so interested, like I loved the cover, I loved everything, and I wanted to make my catalog under his title. So he had asked me that if I did make the catalog, or believe it or not, create the magazine, Go Ship Times. So this happened around 2008 to be exact, because that's when I first published Go Ship Times. The thought was, he said to me, if you publish a magazine with science, things like that, you can use all the plans that I sell, and I'm going to put it in my catalog. Now, at the time, this man ran ads, full page ads in Popular Science. He ran full page ads in Popular Electronics, which was a magazine very popular in the 80s and 90s. And he also ran full page ads. Believe it or not, I don't know what it has to do with electronics and stuff, but the magazine that's called Psychology Today, which is about psychiatrists and stuff, and popular electronics, because there used to be the magazines up there with Popular Electronics, like NIX, Popular Electronics, which is like Popular Science, Popular Mechanics. Those were all individual magazines. Now, Popular Electronics dealt with a lot of how to build things, like from electronic things to whatever, and some of them had beautiful covers. In fact, I have one of them that the guy actually would teach you how to make a machine to speak to ghost, and the cover is fascinating. And this was like, I don't know, mid-90s, and I have all those magazines. I have, in fact, a huge collection of them, because like I said, I've always been into this science, black projects, UFOs. Did I believe in them 100%? No, I didn't, Joe, but I just love the genre. Like, I just love collecting stuff like that. I was very, and like, especially when it came to robots. And I think all this came from the fact that I couldn't have the robot plans I always wanted, still looking for. And I just needed to fill the gap with whatever in the field of robotics that would even be close to what I wanted to do, including where I built 3 robots of my own. And one, after I spent countless hours and days putting together, and I built this beautiful cardboard. I actually bought off Uline, I think was the name of the company that's no, not I think that's the name of this, like a Staples company, but it's like basically all mail order that all the major companies in the United States buy cardboard boxes from and all that. And I bought up, I think like 24 pieces of 24 inches by 48 inches flat cardboard, 200-pound test. And I took that and I started fashioning out this robot that looked like the one in comic books, to be honest with you. And I built a huge 7-foot tall cardboard robot that I put in display in my living room. I was so proud of it, man. I took pictures of it. One day, my wife waited for me to go to work, and she threw it out on me, bro. She threw out my robot, man. I was so mad. And she actually did it because she just wanted to get rid of it from the living room. Then I started building the same one, a wood version. And I put it together, and then that didn't really go well with me. And one day, she had my son my son was about 8 or 9 years old, and she gave him an electric drill, low power electric drill, and he took it apart on me. And I'm like, what? Because, the kid didn't know. The kid just thought it was fun. And she said, no, take this apart. So I had built this robot, and he took it apart. Then I went on for a third time. And the third time I built it, first I built the head, and it was kind of funny because I took a half-inch plywood, and in work where I used to work, there was a carpenter, and I asked him to cut 2 circular 12-inch things out of the wood, and he did. He cut me 2 circles, and I took I went to Home Depot and I bought this 22-inch by 17-inch wide duct, those ducts that they use for not ducts but duct that they I can't pronounce the word now. They use for the air conditioning units in warehouses, right? And I took yeah,
Okay.
and I took that and I started nailing it around, and I made a cylinder shaped head, which is the same one, of course, from the comic book robot. I did two holes on the thing with a drill. Actually, I bought a drill that was called the Dremel, and it was advertised on TV, and I paid like 150 for it to cut holes in steel. Man, that thing makes the biggest noise in the world. And I'm doing all this in my living room, and my wife is just like, can't wait for me to stop. And I put two light sockets and I put two light bulbs for the eyes. I made it look like the Bugs Bunny robot, which was funny. And I actually, when I couldn't do nothing with it, I put it on eBay, and lo and behold, this guy buys it. And when he buys it, yeah,
Oh,
I sold it
really?
for 100. I think it was $118. And I'm like, who the heck would buy this, right? So the guy that buys it, his name is Ken Hakuda. And I said, wait a minute, this name sounds familiar. So I had a book that was entitled "How to Make $1 Million with Your Fad," and the fad, that book, it shows like with a different, how there's different fads out there, and he said, "How to Make $1 Million with Your Fad," and I and the title or the author was Ken Hakuda. So I write him an email and go, "Hey, are you the guy Ken Hakuda?" Now, so that you know who Ken Hakuda is, he's the guy who invented the wacky wall crawlers, those little spiders. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So he
yeah.
invented that, and he made millions with that. So he wrote the book based on that. So it was kind of funny though, because here I'm happy that I sold the head, and then when I shipped it to him, he writes me back and says, "Yes, I am that Ken Hakuda, and I just bought your robot head." But he said it sarcastically, like,
Oh,
"Yeah, and I just got your robot," like, okay. I looked at it and I'm like, man, I shouldn't have sent him anything. But that was a funny story. But then after that, I started designing another robot, which, believe it or not, I built it 80% of it, 8 feet tall. It's in my basement. I can't put it together now because of the top and bottom, but I did have all the parts for it. I bought a couple of motors. What I was trying to build is just basically a robot. I took apart the original robot from I think one of the first robots ever made, which is a tin robot. If I remember the name for it, it's a yellow robot, very barbaric looking, and it was made in Japan. And it's funny again that I don't have the name of that robot right now, but Lilliput. Yeah, the robot's called Lilliput, and it was the first robot ever made, like out of Japan and stuff. And I took one apart and I copied the inside to build my giant size robot, because I'm not an engineer, but I mean, it just made sense to duplicate this in a larger size. I got it. I built it, and I have it in my basement to this day, where the only thing I needed to do on it was finish the outside skin, which I bought like 22 pieces of aluminum that are 4 feet by 4 feet in Home Depot. And I have all that ready to finish it. And believe it or not, I had to stop because I had no place where to, continue building it because of being 8 feet tall. The only place it fit was my living room, and my wife forbade me. She said, "You better not." So, so basically,
now it's time to get the robot finished and get
well,
it
actually,
working.
that's a funny thing that you said that, because my son just got married, and his father-in-law is a carpenter, and he actually told me, "Why do you bring it over, and you can finish it here in my house." So I was thinking of getting it out of my storage and taking it over, because I got to be honest with you, I love things like that. And anytime you have a robot, in fact, there is a lawyer in Connecticut that owns 144 acres, and this lawyer has got a lot of old amusement rights that he buys and puts in his thing. And he always wanted me to sell him that robot. In fact, he offered me, for something that's not even finished, $2,500, which not bad for an investment of about 400 or 500. But I didn't want to sell it because, I mean, like I said, it's my baby there. I have it in the basement. It's actually hidden among all the boxes because I filled it inside with boxes, and I put it from the floor, and the legs are there. And maybe in one of these videos on the weekend, I'm going to show the robot where it is. And I mean, it was fascinating. I spent a lot of time building it, but like I said, that's a story with me and robots. But getting to that, I mentioned all that story to you because that's why when you see people like this coming with jetpacks and stuff, there's a lot of nuts out there like me. And I'm saying nuts because, I'm probably considered a nut when it comes to, I mean, come on, what can you do? But you know what? I'm a kid at heart and I love doing that stuff. Now, we're actually, as we're speaking now, we're getting close to the 50-minute range here. So we have a few minutes left. So we might as well start wrapping up. What other things do you have to bring to the table, Joe?
Well, if anyone's still interested in the electro robot, just a little bit more information on that, which they could look up. Like Eddie said, that it came out in the World's Fair in 1939, and then it appeared again in the 1940 World's Fair with a little companion, Sparko, the robot
Actually,
dog.
that was the same World's Fair, the 1939. He appeared with Sparko. That was the appearance of that robot.
Okay, and the current the scrap pile of the robot is currently at the Mansfield Memorial Museum in Ohio. So if anybody is interested in checking that out, they could go online, just type in Mansfield Memorial Museum, and they could get the directions there and check out that pile there. But that might be pretty cool because that's only about 2 hours away
Oh,
from
come
me, so
on,
I might
Joe.
have to make a little
You're gonna
day
make
trip
me
and
cry, man. You're
check
gonna
that
make me
out.
cry because you don't. I'm honestly telling you, I've been trying to get out there. I was thinking of just driving out there, and I asked my son if he wanted to join me because I want to go there and see that. I'm a little resentful that I wasn't the guy who found it because it was found by. I mean, this is something that Westinghouse doesn't own anymore, obviously. But it would have been something beautiful to find and take ownership of. But that's like anything in life. There's a lot of things in life that we want to do, and apparently, we try, but it doesn't get there. But yes, I've had a lot of challenges. I've had a lot of search in my life, a lot of stuff that makes me who I am and made me who I am since I was a kid. And but the other thing I know you had recently, you had kind of a slight crash in your Crypt of Classic Facebook, and where I also want to tell our listeners that Crypt of Classic will be made available again in a different platform. It's probably going to be out of House of the Unusual website. It's going to be integrated into that because I mean that was a beautiful thing you were doing there, and
Right, we're gonna get it, hopefully up and running on the House of the Unusual site, whether it's in the forum or another format. It could also be found on Instagram, and I'm gonna start getting up some videos soon. I'll get them out to you, and they'll be up at the House of the Unusual YouTube channel, so you could check out the stuff there. I've got a real good video that's going to be coming out on some old comic fanzines, and we'll go from there and just get some real nice classic horror, sci-fi, and fantasy stuff going. So it's still around, but we're going to get it into some more user friendly formats.
and
for
the biggest
everybody.
thing coming is a lot of people have heard a podcast and they're not aware that they can actually leave messages. If you go to Anchor, where our podcast is set, you can. In fact, there's links where if you wanted to, like, say, help our channel, if you wanted to send us a message, you can actually do that directly. That is something I'm finding out that they had. Also, due to the fact of the coronavirus, our system, our way of doing the podcast with the proper microphones and stuff, it's been a little tough because everything's sold out. In fact, I actually ordered a device which is the podcast standard of I think the country right now, and the device is like a little bit over $700 with the microphones and everything. It's over $1,000 of equipment that I've sent away for to make this podcast a really nice sounding podcast. Unfortunately, I'm on back order. I did get the one machine, but I don't have the microphones yet, and there's not a microphone I can purchase anywhere. Even eBay, it's they're going for crazy prices. Whoever has one, So having said that, is our podcast platform will be improving in the next couple of shows. You will hear people more clear. People will be talking a lot better. And I just want to say, because a lot of people might hear this and say, well, I wish they sounded better. But the reason is we're just doing it because it's better to do it than not do it at all. And we have a lot of, nice information that people want to hear. And what we're asking people is just to listen to the content, not to listen exactly how it sounds, for the time being.
Right. Like I always said, we're doing this, just for fun. This is something that we both, have a real passion for, and stuff that we enjoy talking about, because we found ourselves, talking a lot during the week, and said, hey, we should put this in a podcast format, let everybody hear. So we thank everybody for listening, and really appreciate it. And if you have some ideas that you want us to talk about, head over to the forum site on houseoftheunusual.com, and let us know what you'd be interested in hearing about. Whether it's mail order stuff, UFOs, classic horror, sci-fi, or fantasy, comic books, whatever it is in pop culture. Head over there and tell us what you want to hear, and we'll
Yeah,
get it out
and
to
and
you.
one of the things is it was kind of funny because I never thought it was going to happen so early in our podcast. But if you ever heard of the old-fashioned way of saying, you tune into a TV show and it says we're having technical difficulties. So well, tonight was one of those nights. We were actually scheduled to have on as a guest the famous Craig Tobeck from Johnson Smith Company, and unfortunately we couldn't get him on because of technical difficulties. But
So stay tuned for a future
yeah,
episode
that's
with
definitely
Craig.
coming, hopefully soon. And we also have down the pipeline. I'm going to be having a special with David Harversat, and he's going to be. This is going to be kind of like a UFO special where he's going to explain about his book that he published concerning the 6 astronauts that walked the moon and his UFO sightings and stuff. And we will be talking about more flying saucers and and future fun stuff, which I'm sure now a lot of people who are seeing flying saucers can come to the table and maybe bring their stories to us. I mean, we like to hear from you guys. It's important we hear from you guys. And I also want to thank you guys because my YouTube channel has been growing for the last 3 weeks, and it's growing in a pretty decent amount of numbers. And a lot of people are enjoying the thing. And I decided to each and every week open up a brand new box of my collection, and whatever's in there, just show it. I'm surprising myself with the stuff I'm finding that I own, and I think Joe is doing the same in his part because he too has a small, interesting collection there. And we will have again Todd. I mean, I tried to get Todd on the show tonight, but he was pulling a fast one because he says we're going to make him laugh and all that stuff. Well, anyway, we're going to get him on because he did a great job last week. And, he's a cool guy. He's really a good guy
Absolutely.
helping us. And we want to have everybody that, that can join and is willing to maybe appear in a podcast. Please let us know. If you have a subject you like to talk about, we'll have you on as a guest. So having said that, Joe, we're almost ready to wrap it up here. We have about 3 minutes left. And I want you now to wrap it up with whatever other ideas you have. And I guess we'll go from there.
Yeah, just if you can, go to the houseoftheunusual.com forum. Let us know of a topic you want to hear, and if you want to be a guest, drop us a line on there, drop us an email. All the contact information will be on there. Head over to the YouTube. Eddie's got some great videos of his collection, and not only will you have a blast watching it and listening to it, but you get to see these pieces of pop culture history that you won't get to see anywhere else. So it's all about having fun. We're all kids at heart. We're all doing this for the passion and for the love of it. And that's all I got to say.
Finishing up also as well is the forum itself. Joe had brought to my attention that he liked to try a different format. We can have categories, and then when you would hit the category, there's going to be whatever that category is, subcategories where people can discuss certain things instead of just like one thread after another. And that's something I'm working on right now. Uh,
Constantly a
yeah,
work in
we're just
progress,
a
man.
work in
That's it.
progress. We just ask you guys to please help us, continue to build us, continue to join us, and then together we will make things happen. Having said that, I want to say thank you again for everything. Again, please pass on this to your friends. Let them listen to the podcast. Put in your input. We need that, and we like to hear from you guys. Thank you, and another beautiful podcast together, Joe. I appreciate you reaching out. Taking your time, and we're doing this together, me and Joe, as a team. And I'm so glad he does. And we look forward for the future publication of Ghost Ship Times. It's going to probably happen in the next couple of weeks. I first need to iron out the podcast, and I need to iron out the website so that it's working to the standards that we can consider better than now. Meaning, the sound should be better, everything should be better electronically, but it's kind of tough when you try to buy things and you can't because they're sold out and on back order. And it's insane, but that's where we're standing right now because of this coronavirus, which is a phase we all, I think, wish we can forget and get back to normal soon. God willing.
So everyone stay
Well,
tuned and stay tuned
God
and
bless all you guys.
be on the lookout for a lot of
God
interesting
bless all you
stuff.
guys. Stay tuned, like Joe said. And, Joe, till next time.
All right, Eddie.
See you later.
See you later.